record this for later and also put it on the DFP blog so it's easier to find. We are going to be chatting with Chuck Anerino today. And I have Lavinia here from the DFP team who's going to be helping me out with any questions that come in through the chat. And then we have Christine Pasler. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then Laura Beth Davidson will probably also be joining us very shortly. So we're going to give it, I don't know, like a minute of just chit-chatting until to make sure people are getting on. I'm going to close my Facebook in the background so it's not dinging the whole time. Hold on. I probably have it open in like 9 different windows somewhere. Here we go. And yeah, so what we're going to chat about here is one, how amazing Chuck is. And, you know, his very highly regarded course that he teaches through DFP, which is Creating Deeper Documentary Imagery. It runs twice a year, and it's honestly, the feedback on this course is incredible. Students rave about it, and even Chuck raves about the way students grow through the course. So, I mean, not to toot his own horn, I'm sure, but no.
Is it too late to run out of the room? Like, well,
yeah, Chuck's like, can we actually cancel this whole thing? Yeah. I didn't sign up for this.
No more.
So, yeah, but I think one of my favorite things about this program, even though I have not personally taken it, but I love seeing, and I say this every time, that there's like a tangible difference after 12 weeks in this program. And I think what's really amazing about that is, as we know in photography, when we're taking mentoring and different, whether it be a photography course on composition or, you know, a business or whatever, usually it's this like process that takes quite a bit of time of like implementing. But for whatever reason, Chuck has this secret sauce that literally when I see that slideshow at the end, I'm like, holy smokes, this is awesome. That takes quite a bit of time of like implementing.
Sorry, Ash, that
for
was
whatever reason. Come on, Chuck, pull it together. Okay, I'm gonna mute you until you figure it out. You can unmute yourself now. Sorry. You have to unmute yourself, Chuck. There we go.
I just flipped over to another window and it started playing automatically. So I just X'd out of everything. So I'm like, all right.
Melting down.
Sorry about that. I guess it was hearing the Facebook through the Zoom.
Yep, exactly. I've done that one too many times. Yeah, so, but I think that's one of my favorite things, like I said, is seeing that slideshow at the end and just being like, wow, you know, because me being nosy, anytime someone enrolls for a course in DFP, I like to like go check out their Instagram and like see how it's going. And all these people, or a lot of people seem like pretty brilliant photographers to begin with. They have like an eye for something, right? They just want to push themselves some more. And I'm always just, like I said, blown away to see the way that they're evolving with their photography after working with Chuck. So shall we dive into it? Lavinia, are people saying they're on? And
yes, we have some good mornings.
Oh, good.
So I think people can see.
Okay, and it looks like Laura Beth is joining us
here.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Laura Beth. How are you?
Good.
I love that picture behind you. For a second, I thought your kid was actually behind you.
It's almost like this.
I was like, oh, we have another guest joining us.
She's very still. I told her not to move.
You can join us if you be quiet.
Right, exactly.
Perfect. Okay, so I just wanted to get in. What the way this will work is I have some questions for Chuck, as well as Christine and Laura Beth. And then at the end, we'll open it up for, any questions that have come in the chat while we're on. So if you have a question that comes up, just write it in the chat, and Lavinia is going to be keeping track of that. And at the end, she'll read those questions out for Chuck and Christine and Laura Beth to answer. And yeah, so pretty much let's get started. I gotta pull up my handy dandy notes so I don't miss anything. So Chuck, let's start out and just tell us a little bit about creating deeper documentary imagery.
Yeah, happy to talk about it. And thanks for having all of us today. I really appreciate being here and being able to talk to so many people about this. It was sort of around 2017, 2018. That was my last year in formal education. I was a dean of students of a public high school, and I knew that was going to be my last year. So I didn't want to stop teaching. I absolutely love teaching. I never envisioned being like a full-time photographer. My goal was always to be a career educator. And, through some unfortunate circumstances, with my health, I had to leave education at the end of 2018. So I was trying to implement a way for me to continue doing what I really love to do, which is teaching. And I had considered writing, doing workshops prior to that, where we meet on like a weekend and we, kind of learn a whole bunch of stuff on a weekend. But they never felt right to me in terms of like the way that I like to teach. So I never did any of that. So essentially, with me being out of formal education, it gave me the opportunity to say, all right, well, what can you do now, right? Now that you don't have to just cram everything in on a weekend per se, you have the ability to kind of write a curriculum and make it fit for what are really sound educational practices. And that's sort of what I did. So, around that time, I had Ashley and we had started talking, and, I developed a curriculum. And my goal at the time was, at the time in 2017, 2018, a lot of people were sort of just discovering what documentary family photography is. And what I was noticing was that there was so much beautiful, wonderful work. But essentially what we were looking at, and this was part of my own progression as well as a photographer, you figure out what family documentary photography is, or documentary family photography is, and you say, oh, it's just unposed photos. And we go around and we take a whole bunch of candids, and yeah, they're unposed. And they're natural, and they look great. The exposure's right. They look beautiful. But there was always that something sort of missing, something that would make them elevate their images from past a snapshot to more of a photograph. And that's really where I started to write the curriculum based off of that thought, which is, how do we take, we love this concept, right? So that's number one. We have the passion for it. We are competent with our cameras, right? We know how to work our exposure. And we now understand what documentary family photography is. So how do we take it from these casual snapshots that we're taking, these candids, let's call them, to really fine photographs? So essentially what I did is sort of deconstructed the way that I approach a lot of my work, and looked at how to make photographs, how to make deeper documentary images. And that's how I came up with the not so, the super obvious title, in hindsight, I was like, geez, I didn't think this whole thing was going to take off. I probably should have come up with something a little more clever, but it's so literal. But that's essentially what we do, right? We're trying to take these, going from a snapshot and then elevating that to more of a photograph. So that's really the core of the curriculum, of why I wrote the curriculum.
Awesome. I think the name's great. I mean, it just explains exactly what you're doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we have to rename it, what would it be? No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to. Come on, Chuck. Think of a witty name real quick. No.
Yeah.
So how many students have you had this far? Let's see. Or actually, what run will this be? Because what you're getting, the next run is starting June, wait, my brain, 20, what was it?
Somewhere around there. I don't know.
June 20 something.
Yeah.
Which
late
is
June 20, like 27th maybe.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay.
So it's starting a little earlier than we usually do because typically we start, the first week of July, but this time we're doing the last week of June. And like I said at the beginning here, it's something that runs 2 times a year, usually once in January and then once in now end of June or early July. And so I'm trying to figure out how many times the course has run.
Run number 9. This will be number 9, which is crazy to me.
That's insane. And it's a very limited number of students in, and I think that's part of your teaching process, which we can get into a little bit more with, especially with Christine and Laura Beth, and how that felt to be in like a small group and those kind of things. So with it being 12 students, I know it's funny, the first time we ran it, there wasn't as many students, which is typical when the first time you run a course, people want to test it out and see and whatever. But since that first run, after that first run, every time it's sold out. And now every time we put it up to for people to enroll, it sells out faster and faster, which is really stressful on me for shutting down the page really quick. I'm like, pulling out the brakes. No, it's fine. But making sure that we stay in that range of 12 students. And why do you think that's important?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is I wanted to create this course with sound educational practices, and being in formal education, that's what I did for 18 years. So I didn't want to compromise on that. So it was very important to me to have a very small, intimate feel where number one, students feel safe and heard in a space. And so I think that's really important, is sort of having a smaller number there. And then not only that, but from my perspective too, is, being able to give and being able to be there and provide and be available. The difficulty is we are online and we have students from all over the world that enroll in this course. So it's hard when there's a classroom setting. You can handle more kids because you see them every day, or more students because you see them every day through your doors. But anything really beyond 12, I think is very difficult for me to be able to give and provide everything that I say that I will. So, I think that's why it feels like a really good number. And I don't think we're ever going to exceed 12 for this course. And then the other thing too to note is that within that 12, I wanted to make sure that, again, every student had an opportunity to be heard and be seen, and make sure that I can give attention to. So within that 12, I teach every lesson twice on 2 different days, on 2 different times, which is obviously a lot more work for me. But again, I know that that's the right practice. So we actually have 2 groups of 6 generally that
Right.
meet together. So it's 12 in between, right? So all 12 are kind of mingling in between in our private Facebook group. But then on the day where we meet live in class, it's 6 students. And then that gives us the ability to kind of dive into our image critiques a little bit more deeper. Students can ask individualized questions, and we never feel rushed. I don't ever have to shut conversation down and say, hey, we got to be, time, we're going over on time. I try to let things just kind of play out as best I can without classes going, too long. Because again, classes that are too long, no matter how in tune we are, we're going to check out at some point. Right. So, again, I wanted to really kind of maintain sound educational practices. So that's why it's 12.
That's great. Laura Beth, did you want to chime in? I just saw you wrote a little chat.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we divide the class up into usually 6 and 6, but he's very good about saying, like, let me know which day you need this week or for this this lesson, and then if you're flexible. And he tries to kind of put the group so that you don't feel like you're in a class with just 6 people. You see what I'm saying? So you get a little bit of, you get to see other people's work, and obviously time zone issues. Some people just have to always do the morning or always do the evening, but it was nice to kind of, I don't think there was anybody that I never had a class with.
Oh, that's great. I think that's important too, because you get to learn, based on seeing other people's approach and, and hearing what Chuck's feedback would be. I think that ends up being really valuable. Let's see, I was going to ask something else, and now it just slipped my mind. It'll come back to me. Oh, I remember when it comes to, working through the critiques and stuff. So that's a group, like a group critique, right? They submit, you have your live lesson. I'm just trying to understand or explain the dynamics for people watching. You have your live lesson, which is taught 2 times. You get to choose which one you join or, structure that. And then usually with that lesson, there's going to be some kind of assignment, which means that the students return and there is a critique of what they're submitting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you have the structure sort of right. So basically every lesson, with the exception of the first, the first, obviously there's some groundwork and some introductions and things like that. So there's no image critique on lesson 1. It's more in, laying the groundwork for the course, and then the very first lesson. And then every other session from there is essentially structured the same way. We start with an introduction and our objectives for the day. It's basically what I used to do for my history classes and my photography classes in high school. It's the same, really, structured essentially the same. So there's an introduction with objectives, a little recap on the work that was done, and I kind of highlight some of my favorite work that came through in the week. And then we get into our image critique, which was from the previous assignment that they had 2 weeks to work on. And then throughout that time, they've gotten feedback in the Facebook group and things like that. And then now we're going to look a little bit more closely at their work in their image critique. So we work through the image critique, which that takes significant time. But, based on talking to students, I often hear that that's sometimes some of their favorite parts of the course, is kind of being part of those live critiques and being able to ask questions and make comments. And I always encourage comments from students because, we're trying to increase our visual literacy, right? So just talking about photography is inherently good in the practice of growing as a photographer. So I really encourage open conversation during that. And, I think it really elevates the group. So we do the image critique, and then we get into the lesson after we finish. We usually take a break at that point. Everybody's sick of hearing me talk at that point. So we usually take a quick break, and then we dive into the lesson for the day. And again, it's, it's well structured at this point with, I really have a lot of kinks ironed out. I'm always looking to tweak, but I have pretty much a lot of things ironed out at this point. So it goes pretty smoothly. And then we stay at the end until anybody has any questions, and it's kind of the end of the class. Most classes last about 3 hours.
I was just going to ask that. What's the average?
Yeah, most are about 3. Sometimes we go over, and again, I'm not a huge fan of really long classes, but I feel like we have it kind of nailed down. And I kind of liken it to, if you've ever taken a college course as an adult at nighttime, right? It's kind of the same. It's usually about once a week, 3-hour class. So that's kind of how what I compare it to.
That's awesome. Okay, so let me ask you, Christine, because we were talking before we started our live stream. We were talking a little bit about, some of the questions and students knowing if they're ready or not. I wanted to ask this in particular about critique. Were you nervous to submit photos for critique? I don't know if have you ever submitted?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it was, it was very nerve-wracking to, submit images. Every critique you need to submit 10 images. And I remember just I was a terrible person to be around the day before submitting images. I was not a pleasant person at home. You go through your images, trying to figure out which images to submit, which one's the best one. And what I kind of learned though was, and by the end, I feel like I kind of came around, was that it's okay to submit even the images that didn't necessarily work.
Right.
That's how you're going to learn, is by looking at your crap and, and really evaluating it. What could I have done better? And just to circle back a little bit on the critique that Chuck was talking about, I can't stress enough how much of a conversation it is. You're not sitting there listening to Chuck, say this is good, this is bad. It is a conversation between, you as a student and Chuck and the rest of your classmates. about the situation that you were in, you know, your settings, everything. You're discussing the images, how you went about creating the image. So it really is a conversation, which is unlike a lot of other critiques that I've been a part of or have watched. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. But just to circle back, yeah, I mean, it was challenging to put together your final 10, but you know, at the end of the day, you just choose, you submit, and you learn so much by talking through those images. And you also see there are some images that I thought were awful and that it really resonated with Chuck or with my classmates. So it's, you really learn, and your eye really begins to develop through that critique.
Oh, that's awesome. And that actually leads, oh, go ahead.
Something based on what Christine said, because you know, I think that she hit on something I think is really important to me as an instructor. It's I appreciate what Christine said, and that's really what I do try to do is when we're talking about images, we're talking a lot about process. And one thing I think that is really important to note about this class is that this isn't me critiquing your portfolio that you've really honed and zeroed in on. A lot of these are really new concepts to photographers, or, you know, if you're a more experienced photographer in this course, you might know this concept really well, but you might not have dove in really deep into it, right? So when we're talking critiques, Christine's right, it is a conversation. It's not me sitting like on high saying, you need to stop doing this and you need to start doing this.
Right.
I feel like if I start doing that, then student images become versions of what I think a good image is, instead of them diving deep about their own photography and their own journey and their own vision. I will say, I do know sometimes students get frustrated with me. Because they want the easy fix, right? We all want the easy fix, every one of us, right? When we want to fix something, we go to YouTube. You know, if we have a home repair, we go to YouTube. How do you fix this? We don't do a whole lot of self-discovery because we want to get the job done. But photography is not that way. Photography, I really think you have to be on a path. And I think that, you know, getting feedback and understanding your processes and understanding why you did things is far more important than me saying, don't do this, go do that. It's more challenging for the photographer, but I think that the results are far better that way. It's more challenging, it's more fulfilling. And you start to really feel connected to your own photography. So, you know, I'm glad Christine viewed it that way, because that's sort of how I intended, is that it really is a conversation. I don't know that I've ever put that words to it before. So thanks, Christine, for sort of helping me kind of see that. See, look, here we are having a conversation and we're kind of learning about things, right? So no, I appreciate that. I think that that's an important thing to note.
That's perfect. I love that. I think that's so important. Like you said, that they're digging into that, they're not just becoming little versions of Chuck, of how Chuck is going to approach a photograph every time. They're digging into how they're seeing and what's important to them. And, you know, I think that's, yeah, perfect is what it is. Okay, so here's a question, and I'm going to start this out with asking Chuck, like his perspective, your perspective, watching students go through the program. And then I want to hear both from Christine and Laura Beth on their experience with this. So how do you feel from like day one start of the program to final day program is finished? How does their way of photographing change?
So I that's a good question. And I don't, so when students come into my course, I don't look at previous work. You know, quite frankly, I don't want to have preconceived notions about where I think they are based on something they showed on Instagram, you know, 6 months ago. So I really don't do a whole lot of like baselining for like, you were here, now you're here, or whatever that means, because, you know, I think that that's, looking at images is maybe the least important part of this course, which sounds so weird to say from a photography course standpoint. I think what we really try to do is dig into process. And I think that that's where I see the most growth. You know, I think anecdotally, you know, I've heard things said like, I feel like I have a superpower now, like, you know, having this power to walk into a room and say, okay, I know exactly what I want to do here. and I have a plan. So I think that that's probably where the biggest area of, if I had to generalize growth, I think that's probably the area where there's the biggest area of growth. And I think that it's hard to measure that, because I think it's more of a feeling for the individual photographer, that feeling of confidence, you know, and knowing what to do. Because I think once we start feeling confident in what we do, that's when we can really start making the images we want to make, right? When we're not confident where we are, it's like, well, I don't really know. I'm just going to kind of chase everything all over the place. And you might get some good images that way, but it's really hard to replicate that and reproduce it. So I think that the biggest area of growth, I would say, would be in the process that photographers are able to develop over the duration of this course. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's probably where. Yeah,
it does. And Laura Beth, having experienced the course firsthand, what do you feel from day one to the end was like your biggest takeaway?
For one, I think just having more confidence in shooting the way that feels natural to me, but more intentionally sort of within this framework that Chuck helped us build. And it really was, the course really does help you almost build your own way of shooting. And it's not, he doesn't give you the building and show you how to live there. He lets you, you know, he gives you all the materials, and the toolbox is kind of what he referred to it as a few times. You know, you've got all these compositional elements you can look for. You've got different ways to tell a story, and all these things that he's putting into our brains and having us practice. But then he is also very quick to say, you know, I noticed that you did this again. This is something that you, that's sort of really obviously your style or your way of your approach to shooting. And it helps us to see sort of those trends in our own work, and then say, oh yeah, I think I do, you know, I do like all of my lines to be really straight, and that kind of fits my personality. And maybe I'll try to do it differently and see how that feels, or maybe that's just going to be the way that I shoot. And just a second, sweet girl. Sorry, if my
It's okay.
5-year-old twins are running amok. So I definitely just feel more confident. And like Chuck said, yeah, it definitely, I feel more in control of the situation, even if it's a situation I don't have any idea what it's going to look like going into it, because I have that sort of that toolbox, or that idea of how can I look at this and document it from my perspective in the best way possible.
Right. I like that you mentioned that, you know, going in and saying, oh, I guess you're right, I do shoot, you know, with lines or whatever, and that's part of my personality. It's funny because a lot of those things are like this innate process, or like a subconscious process we're doing anyway. And then when we have someone to kind of guide us and help us identify what is happening consistently in my photos, right, pretty much no matter what is happening, it allows us to, you know, further that skill, or like you said, say, right, actually, I don't know why I keep doing this. Let me get rid of it and try something else. So I like that you said that. That's great. Christine, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I actually kind of want to build on what Chuck said a little bit, because I feel like that was my biggest growth area takeaway from the class. Something that Chuck said quite a bit during class was the process is more important than the result. And I got to say, at times I hated hearing him say that. Mm-hmm. Because you just want that good result, right? You're looking at, you're taking each lesson, you're working through it, taking lots and lots of images, and you want your result, you want all that work to be amazing at the end of that 2 weeks before you meet for that critique. And it's not always going to be amazing, but part of that conversation was about the process, that you were utilizing it to make this image. I have to say that I finished the class and I put my camera down when the class was over for a bit. I don't think I picked up my camera for about a month. I took a break, and then I picked up my camera and started shooting. And it was like almost this spidey sense. Right. It was bizarre. It's been so weird to be shooting again regularly. I totally see differently. There's, I'm looking more at my edges. I'm slow. Everything is just the slow down process. It's just let's be clear, I'm still making crap sometimes, but the process is just, it's smooth. It makes sense. And I never have had that before. So before taking it, I've taken many photography classes, and I've never felt all of a sudden it feels just, there's a comfort level there that I didn't have before. And I feel like it's because of that process, that groundwork, that foundation that really came out of the class.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
I just want to say,
oh, sorry, again, Laura Beth, you go.
I just wanted to say, I was so glad that Christine was going to be on here too, because watching her, so during the course of the class, her daughters were playing basketball. And so almost every time we had a new assignment, she had at least one picture from either a basketball practice or a basketball game. And I was so excited every week, because every week her picture of the inside of this gym got more and more phenomenal. And you could tell, I mean, you could probably, if you put those pictures that you submitted for those different assignments in a row, I mean, it was like,
you should
like watching a butterfly. It was amazing. And every one of them hit the marks on what Chuck was having us work on, motion blur or composition lines, whatever. But it was so much more than that too. It was like the story just got deeper and deeper and deeper every week. And it made me so happy to watch. I mean, you literally could watch her progression because she had, the same situation, same environment every couple of weeks to shoot in. So it was really fascinating.
Thank you so much, Laura Beth.
No, and so true. And I appreciate you saying that, Laura Beth, because I'm glad that you just said that, because I was going to say, and Christine mentioned, and it is something I say quite a bit in the course, the process is more important than the result. Which is a weird thing to say for a photography course, because photography is about the image. It is about the result. So if I'm saying that the process is more important, that's like a weird thing, I think, for some students to get their heads around at first. But Laura Beth, that is such a great example from our run of this course, which was just the last run, right? So, if I had told Christine from the beginning, this image isn't good because of X, Y, and Z, her first basketball image, right? Like, I guess the other thing too is, like, a lot of times we know that the image fell short, right? We know ourselves it fell short. So just talking about why it fell short doesn't help much, right? So, when we talk about process being more important than the result, the reason why I say that is I feel like it really gives students the opportunity to not put so much pressure on themselves to make a great image every time they press the shutter. Like, that's a recipe for disaster, right? That's a recipe for absolute failure. And it's a recipe for burnout, and it's a recipe for us to really not like something we love, which is the total opposite of what we want, right? So when we have this space to say, hey, look, the image fell short, but forget that for a second. Let's look at what you did. Let's look at your process here. Keep driving at this. Keep driving at this process right here. And Laura Beth, now, like, I didn't have an example in mind, but Christine's basketball, she's exactly right. Is, it became something where you just kept building and working process. And then guess what? The results came. Right. So, that's, I wanted to just kind of say, that's kind of why I really preach that the process is more important than the result. Because I feel like, we just put a lot of pressure on ourselves to just only focus on results of the image instead of how we get there. And I think that in a weird way, that's sort of counterintuitive. By focusing on how to get there, that's going to really ensure long-term consistency and deep-seated process that's going to help you as a photographer find your vision. So, yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I want to hear about students or people who are like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know I'm ready, or like, I'm an amazing photographer, I don't need this, which is also great. How do students or potential students know, like, okay, I'm ready for this, or this isn't, I think I'm past this, I'm too advanced?
So I'm going to turn that over. So well, actually, let me just give a quick intro, and then I'm going to turn it over to Christine, because I know she had some of those feelings as well.
Yes, perfect.
And then I know Laura Beth had some feelings as well, maybe on the other end of the spectrum, right?
Perfect.
So when I wrote the curriculum for the course, I kind of said like where I thought it fit in and what I thought it would do. And quite frankly, I was not thinking about the advanced photographer. I was thinking about the photographer who knew what documentary was, and they just wanted their snapshots to become photographs. That's really who I wrote the curriculum for. And then what started to happen is I would start to get some photographers who would sign up for my course, and I would be like, oh my God, like you are so good. I would get like worried, like, holy shit, like what am I supposed to teach this person? They're incredible, right? So I got really worried that you know, maybe it wasn't a good fit for them, right? Or maybe someone who was brand new, maybe it was a little too advanced for them. But what I found with this curriculum is it's very elastic, and I found that it can really fit a wide gamut of students. You know, in some cases, there's going to be a lot of eye-opening things, you know, in the very beginning, and students who might be more advanced, it gives them an opportunity to kind of dive back deep into some maybe more fundamental things that they didn't give proper time to because they were driving at result. So I think that's, from my perspective, that's how I view it. You know, I think Christine and Laura Beth are better suited to kind of talk about, you know, how they felt signing up for it. So, you know, Christine, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, because I know you definitely felt like, oh no, I probably shouldn't be signing up for this course.
Oh yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah, I had been, you know, obviously watching this course through, I don't know, a couple of years, really, a few years, and interested in taking it, not feeling ready. When registration was running for the 8th run, I definitely had lots of thoughts. I'm not ready for this. I'm not at where I would need to be. But I just did it. I just decided, I think I might've been the last or second to last person to register. I just said, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And I was so nervous right before that first class. I didn't know who was going to be in class with me. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the most inexperienced photographer. But first off, it's a total mix of people. And I learned from everyone in that class. And Laura Beth is amazing. I always enjoyed being in class with her, seeing her images. Sorry, it's true, Laura Beth, you're awesome. And everyone, it was just, again, it's that conversation, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but it's just such a great conversation that happens in that critique. And yeah, I am, just do it. I mean, it doesn't just sign up. You are ready. Whoever you're thinking that, just do it. Chuck meets you right where you are. And even if you think it's material, just speaking to possibly to someone who's taking other photography classes, or the material, yes, the topics you may have covered in other photography, but Chuck packages it so differently than any other photography class. The way it builds, each lesson builds on the other. It's different. I don't know how else to explain it. It's a different experience. And I mean, you think you covered motion blur, you haven't. You think you covered layers, you haven't. I mean, it's just the way it all is packaged together overall. It's I can't recommend the class enough for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. And what about you, Laura Beth? What was your experience?
When I signed up, it didn't really occur to me that it was like that I was too advanced. And then Chuck sent me a message and he was like, hey, I just want to have a quick video chat about whether or not this class will be right for you. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I think you maybe just consider that you might be too advanced for this. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, so first of all, I don't think anybody ever feels like they're good enough or too good to take this class. Just a second. So that was funny to me, but and I mean, I have taken a ton of classes and I've studied documentary photography for years, and I still, just like Christine said, I mean, Chuck does it in such a way that's so full of stuff to learn. And not only that, but he is such a good teacher, and I think just about every other class I've ever taken, even if it started off like so strong and like great feedback and all those kinds of things, by the end, you could tell the teacher was just a little bit like burned out or just kind of let the class carry itself. Chuck was, I mean, this, you can tell that this is like, it's like taking a class where you have to go into a physical space to do it. I mean, he was so committed and showed up and like checked in with everybody outside of class multiple times, each 2-week increment. So it almost feels like a combination of like a mentorship with him, a mini mentorship with him. And then you also have the feedback from the other people in your class. So I don't think there's any such thing as like not needing this class. I think even Chuck, if Chuck turned the material over to somebody else and had somebody else present it, I think he would learn something from himself every time, even though he wrote the damn thing. So
hey, we should try it, Chuck.
yeah.
Well,
Let's see what happens.
Because I remember that conversation with Laura Beth, because I've admired Laura Beth's work for so long. It's great. Her 100 Days of Summer project, she was doing this really cool thing with the Honda Odyssey with her children, like just really cool stuff that I really like. What's really important to me, I grew up as a working class kid from a working class neighborhood in Philadelphia, and I know this course isn't cheap. So it's really important for me for people to get value out of it. And that's probably the most important thing. And as a teacher, it's a hard thing. I say this to students that are in my year long, like, I'm not always going to hit the mark, right? Like, I'm not always going to hit the mark for, what's going to fit for you right now, but I'm going to work, right? Like, so it was really important for me to have that conversation with Laura Beth to make sure that she was going to get value out of the course, right? Like, above everything, like, it would be easy for me to just take the money and be like, okay, great, I got another student, don't have to worry about that. But that I don't care about that. I care more about making sure that, students are getting value from it. So, that's why I had that conversation, just because, I love her work so much. So it's, I wanted to make sure that I can actually teach her something.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think that anytime, especially like you said, when it's an investment, and there's a reason it's an investment, it's, the instructor or the mentor is putting a lot of work in it. But not only that, when students do invest an actual, something that's not super cheap or like one-off, they're going to do the work, right? We get to see them actually put more effort into it and hold themselves kind of accountable because they've made this investment. And what can be nerve-wracking about that is like, okay, are instructors just letting anybody in these classes? Like, okay, how's it going? So I think it's, it says a lot when you give that honesty, and reached out to Laura Beth and was like, are you sure?
Yeah, and Ash, you're 100% right. So, I taught formally for 18 years. So, I remember I had a mentor early in my career. He said something to me that I didn't understand at the time. I started teaching when I was 21, turning 22. So I was young. And the teacher said to me, my mentor said to me, a course is only as powerful as its students. And I wasn't ready to take that information yet. It took me a long time to kind of figure that out. And, I think that's, if there's, you're exactly right, Ash. I mean, the buy-in from the students in this class, I think are really what make it special. Without them doing the work and grinding and really critically thinking about this material and participating, we have no course. Christine doesn't sit here and say, I got so much feedback from everybody else in the group. Laura Beth doesn't say the things she says. So I think that the credit really goes to the students who are just working so incredibly hard and really taking everything in and giving it an honest effort. It's like a lot of things in life. You get what you put into it. And I've been so lucky that we've just had such great students all across the board. And I think I can say without question is that every run has been wholly successful. It's that's not to say every student had such amazing things to say, but I think that every student has gotten some value out of it, and some more than others, as always. But by and large, I think that the buy-in from each group has just been tremendous. And that's what makes this course go.
Awesome. Okay, Lobby. So hold on one second. My kid's blasting a thing. Can you not? Thanks. Lavi, did you want to let us know if there's any questions that came in the chat?
So one question we have here is, what is the most challenging part of the course? And then maybe we can answer another question that was popped earlier in the event.
So let's start with, we can start with that one. How challenging is it?
I'm going to pass that to Christine.
I was going to say, why don't the students answer? Because they can give a firsthand experience.
Challenging part. Let me think on that. It's a lot of shooting. And I think you need to pick up your camera, even when you don't want to pick up your camera. Even when you think there's nothing going on around you, there's nothing worth, and we all can think that, right? This is our lives, we're in our home. I mean, it's so common to fall into that trap of thinking there's nothing interesting going on. But you just have to sometimes put down, you know, your dinner that you're in the process of making, and just pick up your camera and go shoot. And just keep doing, just so the sheer amount of shooting, I think, was the challenge, but it was a good challenge to have. Without that, you're not going to see that growth. So it's just a matter of just making that commitment that you're going to shoot for two weeks. You have 2 weeks, you have 2 weekends to shoot and present images for the critique. And so just taking advantage of that 2-week period and doing a lot of shooting, making a lot of images.
Awesome. What about you, Laura Beth?
Yeah, I'm not sure I really have anything to add. Just make sure you have a lot of room on your hard drive, because you can have a lot of pictures. And I think you just have to kind of, and really, at least with our group, it got much easier throughout the course of the class, but it's really easy to play mind games and get into a comparison trap, or feel like even just comparing, you know, feel like your own work is not as good as it could be or whatever. But again, it's more about the process than the final result. I mean, I think you just may have to make sure that you really do have the time to commit to it. I would not be able to do a run of it during the summer when I had my kids home with me. It worked for me because they were all in school. And like, there was even a day that my, I think it may have actually been the first class. It ended up being a snow day. And I told my husband, I was like, you're gonna have to stay home from work, because they can't just run feral for 3 hours. And I can't only half listen to this. I'm paying too much money to only half listen to this. So I'd say that's just sort of a logistical challenge, but it's something to consider, is just make sure that you really have the time, blocks of time to commit to the classes each 2 weeks, and then plenty of time to shoot between the two meetings, or between the meetings each 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it's an aggressive shooting schedule. It's aggressive shooting cycles. You know, it's essentially 2 weeks between. And like Christine said, you have, within that 2 weeks, you have obviously all those days. But, you know, if you're very busy during the week, it only leaves you 2 weekends. So it can be challenging to kind of fit in all the shooting. I think another challenge, and I don't think Laura Beth or Christine really had this challenge, but something that I've had from students sometimes is that, you know, sort of like what Christine said, is that you have to just keep shooting. And, you know, we all know that shooting documentary, it's really hard, right? And if you can get one good image, you're like really happy, right, to get that one. So, you know, it's, to think you're going to get it all the time is ridiculous, right? You're not. So you have to sort of work your way through it. So I think that one of the challenges that students have is they don't want to create bad images, which I understand, right? Like, I don't want to create bad images either. But I think the sooner that we realize that this is a process and that we have to kind of work our way through that process, that the better off we are. So I think one of the challenges that students have, they don't always buy into that right away. And I understand why. So I think that can be a real challenge sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. No one wants to make bad images, but it's part of it, right? The process.
Yeah.
So Lavi, what else did we have?
So Charlene is asking, I'd love to work on layering more and wondered if there's any tips on playing and improving on that. Also cropping. Always love people's thoughts on how and why to crop, as it's something I know I need to work on.
Well, I will say layering is part of the curriculum. It's probably my favorite lesson of all of them. I think that, for what it's worth, I think that when I look at, and again, this is really important. This is just my view. This is just the way that I like to view documentary photography. And I really stress that in our courses. Like Ash said, I don't want little clones of me. First of all, I don't think I'm that good to begin with. So if you're going to pick somebody to replicate, don't be me. But I think that layering is really like the hallmark of a really good documentary shooter. Somebody who's able to sort of balance out scenes with meaningful content, I think is really the marker of a really strong documentary image. Again, that's just my view. So layering is a really important lesson in this course. In terms of tips, it's hard for me to kind of give those tips here in this sort of format. But I think that if I can give one quick tip, I would say something that's helped me immensely when I worked with a mentor years ago. One of the things that really helped me is when he said something, we were critiquing one of my images and he says, "Why is this here?" It was something that was in the frame. And I said, "Well, because it was there." He goes, No, why did you put it there?" And I didn't know. I was like, "I don't know." And he goes, "Then you exclude it." And his whole take, it really altered the way that I look at my scenes, which was photography is the art of inclusions and exclusions, right? We include things that modify our subjects in our scenes, and we exclude things that don't. So I think that to get better at layering, I think it really helps to understand what's in your frame and why it's there, right? So I think that when you start paying attention to that more, layering makes a lot more sense, or at least it made a lot more sense to me. So, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time to go into that, but I would say if there's one quick tip, really focus on your inclusions and exclusions in your frame.
Awesome.
Okay, we have one more question. Do we have time?
Yeah, we have a few more minutes.
Okay, so typically course participants are photographing their families, or should we be picking up a project outside of our home?
That's a good question. So I would say probably 85% of students who take this course have families of their own. It just so happens that the last run, Carly, does not have children of her own. And I'm always so, I would say out of the 8 runs, I would say we probably had 6 of those with students who didn't have families of their own. And I'm always so impressed at the work that those students do, because, it's for me, if I want to go make a layered image, I turn right around in that room and I have 3 kids that are sitting there, and I can play with that, and I can fail and fail and fail and fail, but somebody like Carly, who produced just great work, had to go out and find subjects. So a lot of times she was using street photography. Sometimes she would just walk around her neighborhood. She had friends of hers who had families. So, if you have a family of your own, that's the best and easiest way to get practice, to be honest. So it's definitely not necessary to pick up a project. But with that said, if you have a project in mind, or if you are actively working on a project, these concepts are completely transferable. And I think that gives me maybe something to talk about too, is that I've had wedding photographers take this course. I've had people who are just interested in documentary photography take this course. The things that we learn in this course, yes, this is a documentary family group, and that's where the content was born out of. But like I said, with the curriculum being elastic, it really fits a wide range of genres, and it's applicable across basically everything we shoot. So I think that's you know, again, a family isn't necessary. If you have one, that's probably the best case scenario. If you don't have a family, you're going to have to actively find subjects, because like Christine said, I do think it's really important to shoot a whole bunch in this course.
And
Some of my favorite,
a
I
hard
was gonna say, Carly does have a couple of dogs, and she definitely used your
Yes.
dogs. So if you have animals, those work too.
Yeah, and they were good. They were so good.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, then make sure you have a big hard drive or a external hard drive. Awesome. Is there any others, Lavi, or was that it?
No, just a remark. Again, Seshu is saying you are going to make them think during the course, which I think it's plain and obvious from what you said. Mikli Feria, I don't know if I'm pronouncing.
Oh, I love Mikli. She's one of my
yes.
favorites, I have to say.
She just yells, this course is amazing. So it's making big
Awesome.
compliments.
Well, good. Yeah, thank you so much for, Laura Beth and Christine for joining us. When Chuck and I were talking about this, we were both like, it'd be cool to be chat with students like for the firsthand experience. Because as instructors or mentors, we know what we're hoping people are getting out of it, but being able to hear that, oh, my doorbell's ringing. Okay, is really important. So basically, we're going to be opening up enrollment for the next run of Creating Deeper Documentary Imagery Friday. Surprise. And we'll send out an email about that and post in the group and things like that. So if you're not on the wait list, make sure you get on there, because that's where the email goes very first. They get first dibs. And like I said, it sells out rather quickly. So sorry. There we go. That's why I have kids. They're supposed to be opening the door for me.
Little doorman.
So, so we'll be opening up Friday. Keep an eye out on your email. Like I said, it sells out quickly. I mean, it's the day that I know I have to be on my computer making sure, because we have the choice of payment plans versus full pay, which is fine. Either way is fine. But because those two systems don't necessarily connect, I have to make sure I'm keeping track of what comes in and then shutting down enrollment immediately. So I stay on my computer until it's sold out. And luckily that's been quicker and quicker, because I don't have to sit in front of my computer very long. But so we're excited about that. And again, thanks again for talking about it, Chuck. We are so lucky to have you, and really just enjoy all of the value you bring to the community. And so thank you.
Thanks,
all.
Ash. The feeling's totally mutual. It's
Awesome.
been awesome, and I love our community, and I've gotten to meet so many great people, and it's like my favorite part about it. It's teaching and meeting all the great people and having them part of my life story as the days go by. It's really cool. Really cool.
It is. We're really lucky. So
If anybody thinks of any other questions and wants to reach out, I'm sure Christine would say the same, but you can always send us a quick message if you want to ask a student something, or
awesome.
want to know Chuck's deep dark.
And also, I started, and just so everybody knows, it's anybody that's listening, I put down in a couple posts everybody who's ever taken this course. So the alumni list is pretty impressive. Students have gone on to be featured in National Geographic. Students have worked for the New York Times, who have taken this course, and students have won awards and all kinds of cool things. So all of the names are out there. So if anyone is listening and you want some really direct, honest feedback, just pick a name on the list. I stopped taking testimonials at a certain point. I have tons of testimonials. And I figured just publish the list. And if, you know, like Laura Beth said, or Christine said, reach out and just ask anybody anything. You know, I want this, if you're thinking about this course, it should feel really good to you to sign up. There shouldn't be any real doubts. So, you know, because again, it is costly, and I want to be as transparent and open and honest about everything. So.
And then if anybody needs help in terms of making sure to afford it and things like that, you can reach out to me. That's my job, making sure we get you on the right payment plan, because we do want to make education, and really good education, accessible to everybody. So yeah.
And just before we close down, I know we are not National Geographic, okay, but congratulations to Laura Beth, because she just hit the cover image for this month of the DFP group.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It made me so happy.
Good. Congratulations.
I didn't
It
know you
feels like
were
it
on
feels
the
as exciting as National Geographic. It really does.
And you know what it impresses me, what I like is that your photo won the most votes from the people in the group. So your photo like gets, I don't want to say empathy, but relates so much with so many of our photographers.
Yes, for sure. Awesome. Thank you
Okay.
all.
Just one more thing. We are
Sure.
going to add all the information about the course, where to sign up, and everything else in the chat and in the event page.
Yes.
And also in the group.
Right. So right now, when we do that, it'll just be the wait list to sign up from, and then we'll add some info in the group about what time it's going to be open for enrollment. Like I said, we set a time so people know when to set their alarm, because enrollment goes really fast. So yeah, don't sit on it. Be like Christine and just be the second to last. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Nice.
Thank
Bye.
you.
A great one.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye. I think I stopped the live now. So I hope, Lobby, is it off?
Okay.
Yes, it's off.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, thank you, everybody.